My first death experience, I was abducted in 1977 by an American, taken out of the country. He was going to fight in the Rhodesian War. I love to share my story, to get across the people who saved my life during that war. I ended up being shot by a soldier. And as I crossed over, I was looking down on the scene from above. This one woman had really taken me in as her own, and there was another woman who also very much mothered me. And they taught me how to love and be loved. And that changed my whole life.
Welcome to The Veil Between Lives. We're honored you're here as we explore consciousness, the unseen, and the mysteries beyond ordinary experience. I'm Susan, joined by my co-host, Em. Hi, Em.
Hi, everybody. And hi, Robin. Robin's our very special guest today. Robin Landsong is a transformational speaker, visual artist, medicine singer, and medical health intuitive. She had 2 near-death experiences during the Rhodesian War in 1977 when she was 8 years old. When she was called back to life by the medicine song of rural Zimbabwean women and opened her role as a medicine singer, Robin is able to use her intuition to see each person's gifts and strengths. She loves to help people integrate near-death experiences. She has helped thousands of people regain their sense of belonging, creativity, intuition, embodiment, and self-compassion. Thank you so much for joining us, Robin.
It's my honor. Thanks so much for inviting me.
And where would you like to start with your story? You have so much to share with us today. We're so excited to have you. Where would you like to start?
Because I think we're going to enjoy the conversation with each other so much, I'd like to just give kind of like the briefest kind of drop in of one of the really key moments of my first death experience. So I'll give a little context. So I'm American. I was abducted in 1977 by an American, taken out of the country. He was going to fight as a soldier in the Rhodesian War, which is 1977 was a real height year of that war. That was a 3-way civil war. Rhodesia is now Zimbabwe. And so the reason I love to share my story is to get across the people who saved my life during that war. They took the risk. They went outside of, they didn't know me. I wasn't of their race. I wasn't of their country. And they took the risk to take me in because they saw a child that needed mothering. So the context is, like I said, it's the height of the war. I ended up being shot by a soldier. And as I crossed over, I was looking down on the scene from above. And so I was without my parents. They were back in the US. And so this one woman had really taken me in as her own. And there was another woman who also very much mothered me. And they taught me how to love and be loved. And that changed my whole life. So I always like to inspire people to think back on, was there that special teacher? Was there that special neighbor that gave them some attention, some noticing, some witnessing, some I see you, that really changed their life? And so again, I was in this war, I was shot, I was rising up, and the bullet had grazed the top of my head, so I was bleeding out. Didn't go in my head, it went across the top of my head. And this African mama, my Mamiatan, she found my body. She pulled me up on her lap. Again, I was hovering above and could see this. And as I continued crossing through the veils, and I was going home to source that I call the Great Heart. And I consider that the Great Heart sung me into being, and that I was a seed syllable. And this Great Heart, for so many of us, we begin with sound. We begin with a vibration. And so to be leaving and hearing her wailing, and then as I kept going through the veils, I could hear that she changed her wailing to singing. And I went through and I met so many beings, and they were purifying the confusion in me. Because at that point I was 8, I had suffered really extreme abuse from multiple mentally ill adults. And so I had internalized this belief that there was something wrong with me that made people be violent towards me. And so as I was on the other side, I was being purified of thinking, this confused thinking that many children have, that somehow I was in charge or in control of what happened to me, instead of really leaving the accountability with the confusion of the adults. So they were purifying me, they were welcoming me home, and at the same time, my African mama, she again had changed her wailing to singing, and she had called in the ancestors in the land to sing with her, to support her song. And that made her song so potent that it went through the veils that had closed behind me, and it touched me. And when their song touched me, it reawakened my memory that I too was a medicine singer, to sing to people at their deaths, to sing to people at birth, to sing to people in their life transitions, in their healing, in their coming home to their body, their voice, and their truth. So this awakening turned me around. And I started to head back to life so I could live this purpose. And before I got to the final veil, I met another being, and I experienced this being as the face of a cougar. And she welcomed me in, she slowed me down, so she could really give me this key, important message before I crossed back to this life. And she said, we are going to give you images to draw. So you're going to be an artist. And these images are to help you remember your belonging to the great heart, to the matrix of living connection. And you're going to be given image after image after image, and you're going to draw them and share them with people to help them remember their belonging, their wholeness. And so they told me, you're going to be very unsafe when you go back, and we're going to wait to give you these images until you're safe in your life. So I continued on towards that final veil, and there I call her the grandmother of all. Her skin was black, and her eyes were changing to the color of like all the races of humanity. And she was so comforting, so welcoming. And her message to me was the same, that when you go back, you are to sing to people to help them remember that they belong just by being born, that they are innately precious. And so she sang a song inside me to fortify me for what was going to happen when I came back into the war. So I'm going to share a little bit of that essence that she gave me. I am I am no I am ho hey am hey am I hey no he yo here ya. So with my being filled with her song, I went through that final veil, came back to my body, and it was the presence and the touch of my African mama that helped me feel like I was going to make it. Because of course I had lost a tremendous amount of blood. This is rural Zimbabwe during the height of the war, so there was no medical help available. There's not even really vehicles besides donkey carts. So I was not hospitalized then, but they took care of me and they sang prayer over me to get the hatred that came with the bullet off my body, so I didn't grow up to become bitter. And they put plants on my heart, and it was really their singing prayer that let me know that with their touch, with their community holding of me, I was going to survive. But what happened is, again, this is a very complex war with 3 different sides, and the soldiers came back. And even though these were innocent civilians, if they weren't demonstrating being on the one side of the kind of most extreme soldiers, they were attacked. So I was in a hut with another mother when the shooting started, and she grabbed me when she thought the shooting was over, and we were running from the hut. I was on her hip when she was shot from behind. And so we went down, just, immediately slammed to the ground. That got my bleeding started again. And I wanted to be able to pull her with me. But I was 8. I was just, I had just been shot myself a couple days before. I was very weak. I hadn't actually been standing up and walking around very much. And now I'm trying to run to escape. And so she was yelling at me to go. And she had never yelled at me before. So it was probably the hardest moment for me to heal from, is that I couldn't pull her with me. And so I went forward towards the river, and I was going down a sandy slope. I've been able to go back and retrace my steps 40 years later. And so because I was bleeding again and I had to suddenly hit sand, I fell forward and I had a second death experience. And this one was really entirely different. So I went, and it was a white horizon line. So I didn't see, there wasn't like all the beings that I met in my first one. And I'll just pause there for a second and say, so all of it's detailed in my book that I wrote for 16 years, and it is now out for a year and a half, Loving Bravely, a memoir. And so I'll tell you more about this second death experience, because I really think it can give hope when people are at the end of their rope. When we think our whole world is shattered, which my world, these people were my new family, and now they were massacred. And so again, I'm in this white space, just a white horizon line, and a powerful being is singing to me, "You will live, you will live." And it's almost like a little bouncing ball on top of the words, like like that Sesame Street does, because I think the being knew I had a brain injury from the first being shot, and so he was making it really simple for me. And I thought, oh, did I die again? Let's assess the situation. Like, well, I don't feel a body. I'm in a white horizon, and there's a powerful being singing to me. And so he showed me. He drew me closer to him, and he showed me kind of this record that the "You Will Live" song was playing on. Again, this is 1977, so, for everybody who remembers record players when you're a kid. And so he showed me the record had a deep gouge in it, and I said, oh, this record is damaged. It should just be thrown away. And in his great booming voice, he said, "The wounds are how I find you so I can love you." Meaning those places that we feel broken open, broken down, are the places where divine source can show up and shine their light through us. And so that surrender process, that being humbled, that needing to accept help because there was no way I was going to go on with just my own human will. And so he showed me out of destruction makes new creation. And so his example to me was he was crushing together 2 land masses to make a mountain. And when the mountain was at this beautiful peak, he showed me the mountain coming down grain by grain, or little slides to make the beach. And he said, "Shall we bring down the mountain so you can have the beach?" And I said, I don't like the destruction part. Can I just have both? And, have my feet in the warm sand and looking at the beautiful mountain? And he said, you're human. You have a hard time seeing the whole picture. And that creation is made possible by the destruction of something else. Meaning like the breaking down of the mountain makes it available to make the beach. So just inviting myself and everyone listening to really look at where in your life was there a moment where you thought, I'll never rise up from this. And that was a turning point. It may not have felt very choiceful at the time, but that it might have sent you in a new direction that you never would have done otherwise without the moment of loss or grief or termination of something you thought was going to be permanent. So with that teaching, he sent me back to my body. And again, I'm face down, I'm weak. And what I want to share about that is that there was a little tiny plant right next to me. Like my neck is injured. I can barely turn my head. I'm incredibly feeling very fragile. But this plant is still standing. Its roots are in the earth. Its leaves are heading up towards the sky. And I thought, how can this plant still be standing when my whole world has just been broken apart? And so that sign from nature was my first sign that something is still living. Something is still upright. And so this being that as a child I called God of Mountains Become Beaches, I now understand him to be Shiva, a very powerful Hindu being. And he put a drop of himself to reside in me. And that is how I had the strength to pull myself away from the massacre and towards a well where he knew somebody was going to come and find me the next day. And so with his strength, with his determination, not my own human will, I pulled forward. And in the next morning, I was found by Mia Lucy, which means daughter of Lucy. And she found my body. I was pretty much half dead. She washed the blood off my face. She put me on her back as if I was her own child. I'm 8. Being on the back is just meant for infants. And she takes me back to her homestead. And a neighbor sees that she has a wounded white child during this very complex, very dangerous war. And they say, don't bother with her. It's too dangerous. And she says, I won't throw her away. She's a living human being. And so that's why I'm alive. It's her courage to go and love across race, that she didn't know me. She probably assumed that I was white Rhodesian and that my farming family had been killed and that I had survived. She had no idea I was American. But she went to the nearest white family and said, which was actually across the river into South Africa, and said, we found this white child. We don't know who she belongs to. They said, give her to us. We'll find out who her family is. So they took me across the river. And again, I'm 8. I don't understand why they're giving me away when they've been so loving to me.
Yeah.
So they give me to this white farming family. I'm taken in there and, there's running water, there's more food, but I'm not being touched and I'm not being sung to. And so I literally, my wound was starting to get infected on my head, but really I was starting to die again from loneliness, from having no family, no future. And so I went to the one kind of warm held place in that house, which was behind the refrigerator. And I've discussed this actually with the granddaughter of this family. And she said that those old style refrigerators had like a little warm spot behind them. So I tucked myself back there and I started to die again. And I was floating above the farm. And they did find me and they revived me. And then they took me to the hospital in South Africa. And so I have been able to retrace my steps. I went back 40 years later after the war, after amazing levels of research trying to figure out where I was. And I reunited with Mayamu, the granddaughter of Mia Lucy. And so she was part of saving my life, and she was part of taking me across the river to the white farming family. And my reunion with her was one of the most important moments of my entire life, because when I was eventually returned back to the US, my family was a culture of denial, a culture of like, if it's difficult, we don't talk about it. If it's grief, we don't mention it. If it's assault or trauma, we're going to pretend it never existed. So when I tried to talk about what happened, it's completely obvious. I have a wound on my head. I have brain injury. I have broken ribs from everything that happened in Africa. I'm extremely traumatized. I tried to talk about it, and my mom hit me across the face and said, "Don't ever talk about this again." So a lot of my work in my own trauma resolution is about helping. But, first it was about finding my own voice, reclaiming my ability, not only to sing, but to speak the truth. And I really like to bring that to so many women, and also men need to have support and co-regulation and role models in how do we drop back into our body so that we have our boundaries and our potency to be able to speak our truth. And so again, that's the power of writing my book and sharing it with so many people, and the power of going back. And again, that moment with Mayemu, when she greeted me, and it was an unplanned meeting. I had just arrived to Zimbabwe. My host was bringing me in, and who was coming out on a donkey cart going to town for supplies was Mayemu and two other women on a donkey cart with 3 children. So our reunion was completely spontaneous, and the video of it is actually on my channel, Landsong, my YouTube channel. And so she hugged me, and she's super strong, and she picked me up a little bit, and then she bent me forward to check that my head had healed. And we purposely didn't tell anyone where I had been shot, so that we would make sure it was their own personal account. And so when she did that, I've checked my head, and she hugged me again, and she said, "Sorry, sorry, sorry," meaning I'm so sorry that happened to you. It was the first validation from another human being who had lived through that war with me. And it's hard to even communicate how much that healed, that the years of my family's denial. Like, my parents have crossed over. My living siblings are still in denial. They still won't talk about it with me. And, blessings on their healing path. And really, I'm here to work with the people who are ready to say yes to their embodiment, to their aliveness, to their creativity, because that being I met during my first death experience wasn't kidding. The amount of art that comes through me is unstoppable river.
Wow.
Yeah. So I have a music album out, Roots Drinking Rain. I just signed the publishing contract for my second book. And I literally have like so many art originals that they're pouring out. I have to sell them just to make sure I have space for more. So I just love helping people come home to their creativity, and that trauma resolution piece is so important because it makes so our life force is available for ourselves as well as to share with others. I do online sessions as well as in-person craniosacral therapy sessions. And the biggest thing I work with is attachment trauma and abandonment. And that those two things make it so we grow up as adults not knowing how to connect to others and how to decrease our threat defense system so that we can open up to be able to get close to each other. And we really, as mammals, as animals that are clan and animals meant to be with each other and co-regulate with each other, we really can improve the quality of our lives and other people by being able to connect in really authentic and meaningful ways.
I'm really curious. How did you begin to unpack and process and heal once you got back from that experience? Like, when was that available to you? And And maybe you can share a little bit about where you first started with that. Maybe that'll also help somebody that's listening. How did you?
Yeah, and this is so much what my next, my upcoming book is about. So it was very interesting as I started writing the book. I realized nature was my first healing agent.
Hmm.
So as a child, I was lucky enough that we had 15 acres of park behind our house. So the creek, the mushrooms, the mayaples, it was on the East Coast, the birds, like the little tiny creatures, the worms, like they were my first beings that I connected to. That was where my safety was, is out in the woods. And as a young adult, I did a lot of adventures. Like I went backpacking in Alaska. I had an encounter with a grizzly bear, a female grizzly that really reminded me to own my own power.
Oh.
Literally, I was in Alaska, I was backpacking, and I ended up coming pretty much face to face. Like maybe we were about like 20 feet apart. And it was the height of berry season. She was well fed. She had had plenty of fish. And, she smelled me in advance. So she didn't actually startle. And of course, my heart's pounding, my heart's in my throat. I'm completely paying attention. I know she can, she could end my life if she wanted. But something different happened. Is that all of a sudden, because she wasn't rousing and because she just stayed still, like she was sitting on, on her hind, and she was just watching me. And I all of a sudden felt like we were sisters of different species. And I know some people might find that hard to comprehend, but because, I didn't have a war mentality with her, because I had I am equal to you, and I think that was opened in me during my death experiences, I am equal to you. And it decreased my fear. And we just literally sat and looked at each other in the eye for like a good 40 seconds. Hugely important moment in my life. And that equality with nature reminded me that I belong, that shame and unworthiness aren't really relevant when you remember your belonging in the web of life, when you remember your equality with all creatures and all living things, which again was really given to me during my first death experience. So nature as healer was my first. And really my body started collapsing from the stress. Cortisol is one of the stress hormones. And my cortisol levels were so high as a teenager that it was literally starting to eat at my heart valves. And so I had actually also been assaulted by a family member, and that sent me into more death experiences. But the cortisol, the stress, was killing me, literally. And so I was hospitalized, and so the sad part is that experience is in that time, that was about 1987 or 89 or so, and nobody knew what they were looking at. They're seeing this Caucasian, high-achieving high school student, and they're not asking questions about, are you safe at home? Hopefully now there's more people who are doing that. But at that time, they just thought I was too stressed out about being an honor student. And I was like, oh my God, you are missing the boat. So, so I was returned back home to where I was completely unsafe. And so that's a really big part of like my training and my research. I've done about 25 years of training in trauma resolution and really the neurobiology of what happens in our body when we have survived assault, trauma, neglect, abandonment, and really bringing that validation to other survivors of trauma so that we know that survival response like fawning or freezing, it's not actually even a personal choice. It's a neurobiology decision made in a millisecond. And so I like to share, like one of my teachers, Stephen Porges, he developed the polyvagal theory. And he talks about if humans decided their survival strategy from their personality, we'd all be dead. It's too slow. So our neurobiology, our nervous system makes the decision on our behalf in a millisecond. So I just like to share that if somebody froze when they were being assaulted, that is the most common and most accessible strategy for children to make it through when they're dealing with a fight with somebody who's way more powerful than them on multiple levels.
Can you talk a little bit about the other book that you have coming out? Because that is also about healing and the healing of the nervous system and being more embodied.
Yeah, because it's so important. Part of the reason I was inspired to write the book was I see a lot of times, like when people, are letting others know that they have some kind of unresolved history of trauma, that the usual recommendation is to go seek out psychotherapy, which I'm all for. That can be a very helpful method. And old school psychotherapy has got hierarchy and patriarchy in it. And so it really depends on the practitioner. And there's so many fantastic practitioners who are moving towards somatic therapy, so including body sensation. So kind of old school is like I said, it can be very patriarchal. It can really end up blaming a lot of feminine people and excusing masculine people. So I'm all about what are all the community ways that we can be of service to each other. So, dance, movement, nutrition, herbal solutions for our adrenals and our nervous system.
Yeah.
And there's, being in community, like a safe dance experience. There's all different kinds of healings, massage, acupuncture, craniosacral therapy. So I really encourage people to have discernment, not only about the methodology, but the practitioner. And so I feel a practitioner is as good as the depth of their own healing. So we've all met people who have a PhD, but are up in their head and haven't done their own healing work. And then we've met somebody who doesn't have a lot of credentials, but they have really walked through their own mindful practice. They've done lots of body work. They've done lots of movement practice. They've done their meditation, and their healing presence is quite extraordinary and of service to many people. So again, I'm really encouraging us to move from outsourcing to a hierarchical model to insourcing and being committed to co-regulate our nervous system with one another so that we can heal on a community level. Because the other piece is so few survivors of assault and trauma have gotten validation. So I've been doing this for like 25 years. And when I do the math, any practitioner who's been doing this for a long time and, does weekly sessions, if you actually did the math for how many people they've seen, I think it adds up to me for like 18,000 people around the world. And literally, I have heard thousands and thousands of, child abuse stories, teenage stories, assault stories, neglect stories, medical neglect, religious abuse. Those who actually even got their crime reported, and it didn't actually go anywhere, probably 9 out of thousands and thousands of people I've worked with.
Yeah.
So that really emphasizes not waiting for some external authority to see you before you start your healing.
Yeah.
Because the number of people who have received justice is a very small percentage. So if we can make more safe spaces for people to tell their truth in a good and steady way, and again, the more we do our own healing, the more our presence is welcoming for people to tell their truth.
Yeah. Kind of wondering, how old were you when you realized this experience that you had wasn't just something that happened to you, but something that would define your life's work?
Yeah, I think it was when the singing medicine, when I was kind of what I call my gritty years and my trauma resolution, this singing started emerging back through me. And I was, I was a little bit confused, like where is this coming from? And I think I always sang to myself as a child. I was very kind of solo and alone as a child, and I would go on the swing in the backyard and just sing little songs to myself. But when the trauma story started coming up from the depths to the surface to be seen, so did the good stuff. My power, my agency, my gift, my creativity, and the singing medicine started emerging. And it took a little bit for me to fully own it and take responsibility, because taking responsibility for our strengths and our gifts is not for sissies.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit more of that singing. Can I go ahead and do that for you, Em?
Yes.
Yeah. So what I'm doing is I'm listening to the song in the land where I am, which is California, and I'm listening to the medicine songs that I carry, that I was born with. And then I'm doing my best to listen to the song that you were born with. And hopefully I can weave a little bit of that in. And so that's what I think moves people, is being seen, that all of us need compassionate witness, and being sung to is a really beautiful way to receive being witnessed. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Shumnayayo, heyam ayi, heyo ayam, heyam ayo, ho wo, ho wo, nai, mo. Yaye Hama, Yaye Hama, Yaye Hama Wo.
That is so beautiful.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, are
Much.
there any sensations or emotions you want to share?
Yeah, I feel a bit emotional. I feel connected, not just to myself, but just to that vibration. Not just connected, the three of us, but I really feel an openness.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's very beautiful. Speak up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There was some resonance in there, a bit of a mystery that I carry with me too. So
Mm-hmm.
that was really nice. That definitely felt like it opened something. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, a lot of people say that, and yeah,
Okay.
hopefully like a bit of a coming home, because when we have that compassionate witness, it becomes safer to be at home in ourselves. And that,
Yeah.
that maybe that freezing and fawning or leaving or dissociating we had to do to survive situations, that being sung to can bring some of that permission to come home to ourselves, to kind of bring back any lost vitality. Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely beautiful.
I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about some of the people that come to see you, and what they bring out of their experience of that kind of coming back to home that you're helping them with.
Mm-hmm.
Love if you would talk about
Yeah. Yeah. So many people feel permission to drop down into their pelvis, drop into their hearts, kind of get out of their head, and permission to take good care of themselves. Because, a lot of, like I said, when we've been abandoned or, suffered different things, we kind of don't have permission to take good care of ourselves, like feeding ourselves well, feeding ourselves whole food, high quality whole food, and taking the time to cook at home. So I'll share one of the, I'm just about to release Veterans Healing Trauma Through Singing Medicine, a film, a 30-minute film that I've made over the past 3 years. And
Oh.
one of the women, she was in the first Iraq, and she's a mother and a soldier. And she said so clearly, before Iraq, I used to sing to my kids. When I came back from Iraq, I didn't sing anymore. And she was talking about that feeling like she left a part of herself behind in the war. And so I sang to her, and this was in person in Oakland, California. And literally the singing is like 2 or 3 minutes. And she said she felt like that part that she had left behind in war, that came back to her, and that she had the desire again to go home and sing to her children.
Yeah. Yeah.
just that vibration of your singing. I mean, it gets into every cell of the body, right? Yeah, that's beautiful.
Mhm. And again, we One of my favorite teachers, Daniel Siegel, he is talks about interpersonal neurobiology, and he has a great book, Mindsight, that I highly recommend if you're a little bit of a science geek like I am. And he just emphasizes over and over again that even if it was just one person, you know, that grandmother or that neighbor or that karate teacher that saw you, that looked you in the eye and said, "You're real, you matter," that can really change the trajectory of kids' lives. And so I like to emphasize that. So, you know, once we're in our adulthood, that we can be that person for that child, you know, that we can put a hand on their back and say, "Oh yeah, I see what you're up to." And not overpraise, because that's kind of creates a false persona, but just that real simple presence, being with.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like there's simple ways, right, that we can show up for each other and create community and that sense of belonging and feeling heard and seen from both directions, right? Those simple little things that somehow, with whatever's going on in society right now, that we're not noticing, we're not paying attention to the little things that matter that are so important.
Yeah. And you know, on one hand, as kind of dire as things are right now, I think it's actually bringing out those who might have been sitting back a little bit to come forward and create these community events and to create these declarations of human goodness.
Mm-hmm. So true.
Hmm. Yeah. So, Susan, would you like to be sung to?
I would love it.
Okay. All right. Shumyahayam Hoeyo Hoeyo Nayam Hayam Hoeyo Hoeyo Nayam Hayam Hoeyo Hoeyo Hoeyo.
Oh,
That really vibrated in every
Oh,
sense.
great.
Opened up something in my heart too.
Mhm.
oh. Do you, how does it come through you? Do you feel a connection to divine? Do you feel a vibration? Do you feel like you just kind of open your throat chakra and it flows through? Like, what is it?
Yeah, so meditation has been a really important part of my healing process. I'm a visionary Aquarian. I can have like very upward and forward energy. So every day I ground down to the pelvis. I root down to my second and first chakra. And so I'm really listening. Again, I'm softening and opening to the land, to Shiva, to Yeshua, to the grandmothers who have supported me. So I'm letting them come through my vocal cords and sing the medicine that's needed. And so the number of times I've surrendered and said yes to this calling, to this purpose, is literally thousands. I regularly try to surrender every day so that I'm coming from divine energy and not Robin's will. Mhm.
Yeah.
And whenever I do that, whenever I get into Robin's will, like, and I think I'm in charge, it just gets stressful, you know? Whenever I relax back and be like, "Oh, right.
Yeah.
I'm the observer who shows up to do my part." And that is a way better place to participate in life.
Yes, it's so much easier, right? The other part feels like there's so much resistance, like we're fighting against something.
Yeah, and then I get resentful when I don't get my way.
Yeah,
And, you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
how
Oh,
come this didn't
yes.
work how I thought it would?
Mhm. You are also a medical intuitive.
Hmm.
Does that play a part in when you're connecting with the person that you're singing to?
Yeah. So as a craniosacral therapist um, and so Yeah, that word is a little tricky. Sometimes I like to say health intuitive, but it's not as well known. And because I'm not trying to be part of the medical system, I'm not trying to diagnose. And so my training as a biodynamic craniopsychotherapist is to look for the health as well as the distress.
Yeah.
And so that's the piece that I see sometimes in like some of the medical intuition training that doesn't appeal to me as much is I want to find like where's this person's brilliance just as much as where's their heartbreak. So what got opened in me during all my death experiences is not seeing auras, but seeing an internal anatomy. So I see organs, I see brain, I see nervous system, I see how these systems function together. And so when I started to realize this, I decided to get, like the massage school I chose was the highest training in anatomy I could find. And since then I've done lots of specific brain trainings, nervous system trainings, because sometimes I can see down to the cellular level and I get little movies or little kind of emotional clips. Like I was working with one woman and, she was saying she had neck pain. And so again, from my training, I know that the problem might be in the anterior, not the posterior, even though the pain might be showing up back here. And so I was singing to her. When I'm singing, I get more intuition. And when I was singing to her, I suddenly saw the back of her head contacting a wood porch. And I felt this kind of like quick empathic wave of fear and betrayal, and that it was somebody that she had trusted who was now maybe had gone mentally ill and had pushed her down on this porch. And so I'm very careful when I ask about these because one, I'm not, always 100% right. And two, I want it to be the person's agency that's doing the healing. I have concern when intuitive needs to be right. But I really like to increase the agency of the person I'm doing the reading with. So I just said, was there a time that something scary happened with somebody you had trusted and was on the porch outside and it was just really quite a shocking betrayal with this person? And she started to cry and she said, yes, my son, my grown son, had mental illness all of a sudden and he pushed me on the porch and it caused a concussion. So we worked with not only the physical impact, but the surprise and the hurt and the betrayal of like, oh my goodness, I have to protect myself from my own child. So what happens around the incident is incredibly important. Like if somebody just falls off the horse that they love and then, it all works out and they get cared for and they get back on the horse, there isn't a secondary trauma versus if somebody was assaulted by a neighbor and they come home and tell their mom and their mom says, don't ever say that about our lovely neighbor again, then we have a whole nother layer of trauma that's actually even harder to heal than the first incident from somebody they didn't trust. So looking at those layers in the nervous system, in our basic human needs, is the really critical part to how do we even approach healing around this. Yeah, and I want to say a little extra piece about the abandonment is I was taking a training with Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote The Body Keeps the Score. And he's a very large Dutch man with this huge, deep voice. And he was standing up at the front of the room and he said, neglect and abandonment is harder to heal than violence. And what he was saying is that, if you get hit by a parent, then eventually, in your teen years or early adult years, that was messed up. That was wrong. Like no parent should become violent with their child. And it's easy to see the event and it's easy to name who was wrong. Neglect and abandonment is seeing what didn't happen, what didn't occur. And it's far more complex that people and children internalize something is wrong with me, that I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy, I shouldn't even talk, I shouldn't even have needs. So the biggest thing in the healing process is first befriending that you have needs for connection, that you have needs for touch and safe being held. So that's the real first key in a lot of healing is just befriending our own needs instead of shaming ourselves for having needs for safety, connection, belonging.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that experiment with the 3 jars of rice. And it came from the Japanese guy, I can't remember his name right now, that does the experiments with water on the consciousness of.
Hamoto?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And they did an experiment with the 3 jars of rice, and one jar, this person put them nearby, and every day would tell one jar of rice, "I love you, you're beautiful," and say nice things. One jar of rice, he would say not nice things to, and then one jar of rice he ignored. The jar of rice that he said the hateful things to got just as moldy, just as fast as the one that was ignored.
Yeah.
Like, this is so important.
Mhm.
Neglect and abandonment. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And that seeing ourselves, because we can kind of grow up in adulthood and and start abandoning ourselves all the time, like
Yeah.
eating a bunch of processed food, like working overtime too much, not like taking a vacation, not taking care of ourselves, just scrolling on a phone forever. And so the key is to stop abandoning ourselves and our body and our human needs. And then, trying to build our life around people who are careful with each other. I live in Mount Shasta, California, and I've got some really great friends. So,
that's
I love it. You're spreading this message and reaching people, building community, not just community like our immediate community, but really broadening and widening that. There's so much need out there right now. There really, truly is.
and I guess that's what I love about my work is that, especially my 5-person groups, 5 people from around the world will sign up, and I'll sing to each person and do an intuitive body and health reading for each person. I do an intuitive drawing for each person. Like,
Oh,
so I have my colored pencils right here, and like I do a drawing for somebody that's an intuitive read. And so
oh,
the 5-person groups are great because healing solo or healing, in individual sessions is fantastic, but healing in groups, especially like
yeah.
small 5-person groups, is even better because we see each other's humanity. So I feel quite, while there's incredible discouraging things, I feel quite encouraged because I draw in and get to work with all the people who are saying, what else is possible? How can I heal? And some people are farther in their healing process, and that's a delight to work with. And some people are early on and they're really asking, how can I live my life in a more compassionate, kind, healthful way? And that's an exciting question.
Yeah. And I think there is an increase in people showing up for themselves. I mean, I definitely see that for
Mhm.
sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I'm so glad that you offer that. That's beautiful.
Mhm. And I want to bring up something that because of course I mostly work with women and I'm always delighted when men sign up. And it's kind of one of my goals to work and do singing medicine at men's retreats. And so I just have my first one coming up in October that I'm going to do that with because the masculine, this might be a controversial thing to say, but the masculine feels really lost right now.
yeah.
We have these crazy examples, in
Yeah.
our government right now of really confused backwards masculine, but it's really bringing narcissism to the forefront to be an important conversation. And there's so many women who are watching the videos around like, this is what a narcissist does. This is entirely predictable. They almost have a script. And so many women I know are waking up around not tolerating narcissist behavior. And of course, I'll add that, there are some women who are struggling with that themselves. But to not tolerate abuse and not tolerate meanness and not tolerate narcissistic, like constantly being confused by the narcissist is a really exciting shift that's coming out of this kind of dark chapter in American history.
Yeah. I can see that happening in real time. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And something that's very exciting to me in particular. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, like I said, I live in Mount Shasta and it's just full of strong, clear, amazing women and just these conversations are happening of like, nope, I'd rather hang out with my safe friends than be in a relationship that's
Yeah.
so mixed with like, hey, I'm being praised. Yay.
Yeah.
Because the narcissist will exalt and then crush. And
Yeah.
so many women are like, I value my peace too much. I'm not going to go for that anymore.
Yeah. I have a teenage daughter that's learning this right now.
Oh, yeah. So you have your 5-person groups, you have the retreats. What are some of the other things in addition to working one-on-one that you offer? I want to make sure we
Mhm.
cover everything. 'Cause it is-
Yeah. So right now I offer pretty much monthly a free transmission meditation.
Ooh.
And so I realized this a while ago. I was attending the classes of another healer who was quite amazing. And I thought, oh, I regularly meditate with the beings from my death experiences. I have an ongoing living relationship with them. I talked with them all the time, and I meditate with them daily. And I thought, why am I not sharing this? So I offer a free meditation where I drop back in. I set up my massage table next to my computer. I lay down, and for 30 minutes, I drop back into my near-death experiences, and I refresh my relationship with all the beings. And I ask them all, I say, all of you, what is needed for the group that showed up today? What healing, what presence, physical, emotional, spiritual, creative, ancestral healing is needed for this group? So the beings will kind of pass through me to the group. And it is super fun. I never want to end them. I just, by 30 minutes, I'm like, because to meditate by myself is one level. To meditate when I'm got 60 people online with me, oh my goodness, the potency that happens. Who knew it would work online? But it does. And so,
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
group meditation gets so yummy, so potent, and people will have like the most amazing, like, oh, my grandparents came back and, told me I'm so sorry for what your parents did. I'm sorry I didn't prepare them to be better parents. Or the land will rise up, or fire, or the elements will rise up, and people and do these incredible levels of um, symbolic healing that becomes physical and emotional healing. Yeah.
How does that feel in your nervous system? I mean, is that a lot? Is it better now that you've been doing it for a while? But how was that initially and didn't fry you out?
I love it. And I've worked on my energetic boundaries for
Yeah.
25 years, so that's pretty clear for me. I don't have a lot
Okay.
of there's places where I'm vulnerable, but when it comes to
Yeah.
working with clients or working online, I've got it pretty dialed in. So usually afterwards, I'm like on cloud nine. I just feel like the oxytocin and dopamine in my brain is fantastic. And I just get so enlivened by bringing the benefits of my many near-death experiences to other people when they didn't have to get shot or assaulted or crushed or broken. So, that's the goal of so many near-death experiencers. I'm sure you understand is how can I bring the benefits to this plane, to this living world, so that just like you said, we can have a more loving place where kindness shows up more often.
Yeah.
Wow. And you recreate the near-death experience and you go back to that. Obviously, the beautiful part, right?
Yes,
The
exactly.
traumatic
I
part.
skip over the being shot part, and I just usually I drop in with Yeshua because that was one of the first major beings I met, and then I go to the grandmother of all. I also call on the people who saved my life, my Mami Atan and Atto, and Shiva in my second death experience, and my ancestors who were in my fourth death experience. So yeah, I just really say, what is needed for this group's healing today?
Yeah. I find it just incredible that Shiva showed up in your experience. I find that mind blowing.
Yeah.
I love it.
You
Love
know,
it.
I'm like a Caucasian, East Coast, exposed to nothing Hindu.
Yeah.
So the way I make sense of it is I do believe in reincarnation and past lives. So obviously that was a important relationship for me in a past life. And so he was what I needed. I needed somebody who was going to be like so strong and showing me that out of destruction comes new creation, because that was the teaching I needed.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. When I was very young, I spontaneously just would burst into yoga. Yeah, yeah. And my family was like, "What is going on with this kid? Like, what are you doing?" There was no exposure whatsoever. And here I am doing these things. Anyway, there's a whole long story about that, but I know now that it was just a part of that reincarnation process.
Yeah.
And it's something I just brought with me from, very young, and
Beautiful.
integrated itself later in life as well. And
And I think that, again, that's the beauty of, coming together in these groups, is that I just love to be with people where we can just fly our freak flags together.
Yes. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. You get me.
There's so many highly empathic people, and we're a small percentage of the population. I think we're like 9% of the population. We're swimming in a sea of people who they are far more oriented towards past precedent, meaning like this made up tradition is the rule by which I have to live my life. And just because my forefathers did it, this is how I have to live my life. And then there's this 9% of us that are highly empathic. We're future oriented. We're asking the questions, how can humanity evolve? What can improve here? Whereas the majority of the population is asking, how can we keep the rules as they are? And it's like, whoa, that's not how I think,
Yeah. The whole system is crumbling down, though. I have a feeling.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I think about all of the years that I spent trying to fit into that. And I mean, just the dysregulation that it caused, and the upheaval and the suffering and pain that it caused in my life to try and swim in that river. It just wasn't ever going to work. I was always going against it.
Yeah. Yeah. And how many highly empathic children are mentored well? That get born into a family that says, wow, you have a gift. This is such a thing to cultivate and mentor you in. Because I love mentoring, teenagers and highly empathic kids to, have the boundaries, so they don't need to shut it down. And it's healthcare to mentor highly empathic young people, because otherwise they're very stressed, and stress is a healthcare issue.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we're talking about this, because I think also for people who are empathic, right, to find your tribe, find people that you resonate and that you can have these safe conversations in small groups, or even like platforms like this. It's one of the reasons we created this podcast, is a safe place to share our story and be seen and heard, and a sense of belonging. It's really important. It's really
Yeah. I know we're close on time, but I just want to share a story about that. I was working with a teenage girl. I think she was probably about 14, and her mom comprehended who she was. She was a energetic powerhouse, and literally she could walk in and just change the room. And so her dad brought her for the session, and they always had parents stay when they were young. And so her dad was kind of like this charismatic, good-looking guy. He was used to being kind of getting a lot of attention. And so, he was sitting in the parent seat in the room, and I was mentoring her. And I was saying, okay, I want you to bring your energy in. We did that practice. Okay, now I want you to bring it out 1 foot. Okay, 2 feet, 3 feet. Now I want you to fill the room with your energy. And she did. She's a rare being, and she filled the room with her energy. And her dad, literally his jaw dropped down. He was like, holy, this is my daughter? She's like an advanced being. And then I was like, okay, now fill the building. Now bring it back. Bring it back to the room. Bring it back to 5 feet. Bring it back to 1 foot. Now bring it in just to your skin. And I looked over her dad, and again, he's like jaw dropped, tears running down his face. He just got to find out that he's parenting an avatar.
Wow. Yeah. Oh my God. Bless his heart for having the openness, right?
Yeah.
To take that, I don't know, to bring her to you. I mean,
yeah.
Really beautiful.
Yeah. And for somebody who was that potent, the challenge was to teach her to use it in a good, thoughtful way. She's 14.
Yeah.
So mentoring young people who are highly intuitive or highly energetically potent is essential part of their healthcare.
This has been such a rich conversation.
Yeah. I could do this for another hour easily.
What wisdom can you share if someone listening today is carrying something they've never spoken aloud? What is one first small step that you would offer them?
Journaling.
Ooh.
It's private. It's theirs. They can do what they want with it. And you're self-witnessing. And then maybe tell it to your cat.
Yeah.
So you're moving up from journaling, where it's entirely private, to tell it to your cat, tell it to your dog. And then you're leveling up because you're telling it to another mammal with a nervous system. So, maybe in between journaling could be like a tree, which is a living sentient being, but it's not got a nervous system. So telling it to something with a nervous system that can respond to you is the next level up. If from there, choose a human that, like, test them a little bit, test the waters. Don't walk up to somebody you haven't met and then just spew your whole delicate story and like expect them to be able to take care of your vulnerability. Yeah. Choose carefully, test the waters. Tell them about somebody else's trauma story and see how it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then do it in little increments and see how your body feels afterwards. You could sing it in the shower.
Oh, I love that.
Getting that resonance going, even just singing, like, I'm sad, I had a loss. Whatever way to start to witness yourself, and then you decide, is it a journal, is it a tree, is it a cat, is it a well-selected human being?
Beautifully.
That's sage advice. Robin, this has been such a joy. I'm really enjoying this conversation and do plan to connect outside of here as well.
Great.
So for our audience, where can listeners go to learn more about you and step into this work themselves?
Yep. So put my book again, Loving Bravely, a memoir. And my website is my name, robinlandsong.com. And so there's the free transmission meditation. There's the 5-person groups. Again, I love, love, love doing those. There's individual sessions. I'll resume my classes again soon. My art is on the art store. And what else do I have? Seems like there's something else. Oh, and then my YouTube channel is Landsong.
Oh, fantastic.
Yep. And of course, Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah. And we'll include the links for everything in our notes as well.
Yeah, and look for my Veterans Healing Trauma Through Singing Medicine.
Perfect.
It should be coming out like maybe next week.
Fantastic.
Oh, lovely. Yep. Loving it. Well, to everybody, thank you for stepping into this space with us. If you feel nourished or inspired by The Veil Between Lives, please subscribe, like, share, comment, or leave a review. It helps these conversations reach the souls meant to find them. Thanks again, Robin.